Good afternoon, or good evening for some of you. I am Bob McConnell, co-founder of the U.S.-Ukraine Foundation, and a couple of housekeeping thing here first. If you haven't been in on the other sessions and you want to and need to listen in English, there are buttons down at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. It looks like a globe, and it says interpretations under it. You should click on English to hear it. You should click on English to hear English, German or French to hear Ukrainian. If one of the panelists is speaking in, if one of the panelists is to speak in Ukrainian, if you are an English speaker, switch to French to hear that interpretation in English. Now, with the housekeeping out of the way, the moderator of this panel is Ed Chow. Ed worked for Chevron for over 30 years in the headquarters and on assignments internationally all around the world. He is now a senior associate in energy and security and climate change program at CIS. But more than that, Ed has been an advisor to the governments, United States government for sure, many companies all around the world. He's busy all the time. Other than this last period with COVID, it was hard to know what part of the world he was in when you tried to reach him. But important to us at the U.S.-Ukraine Foundation, Ed is a member of the board of directors and the chair of the energy task force of the Friends of Ukraine network that the foundation has. He has been an invaluable advisor and assistance and counsel to the foundation. I'm happy to introduce my friend, our friend, Ed Chow.
Thank you very much, Robert, for that kind introduction, and welcome to the hundreds of viewers that we have at this wonderful conference that the U.S.-Ukraine Foundation is hosting. This is the hundreds of people viewing is many more than what we can accommodate in a physical conference, which the foundation tries to have in December of every year, which is, I guess, the benefit of not being able to travel. So there are pluses and minuses in having the pandemic. The theme of this year's conference is partnership between our two countries through innovation and reform. Ukraine's challenges in modernizing its energy economy and reducing the vulnerabilities in the sector are well known. Its government has set ambitious targets on securing the country's energy future and building a greener economy integrated with the West. We have an excellent panel to discuss this prospect and the potential for deepening cooperation between the United States and Ukraine in the energy sphere. Since our time is short and we have 5 speakers, I will introduce our speakers as I invite them to begin. I may ask them a follow-up question, as I hope we will have time to get into some discussion and to respond to any audience questions. First, we have Minister for Communities and Territories of Ukraine, Mr. Alexei Chernyshov. Mr. Minister, thank you very much for joining us. I understand you had to adjust your travel schedule in order to make the session, so we're very appreciative that you can be with us. The purpose of the energy market, after all, is to serve the needs of consumers. I know this is something that you pay a very close attention to. Please, if you could tell us your perspective on Ukraine's energy future and what improvement can and should be made. Mr. Minister.
Hello, dear colleagues. My name is Vasil Lozinski, and I am as a first deputy minister. I'm apologize because we have our minister is with prime minister now, and he cannot be with us. I'm sorry for this, and I'm after him. Could it be possible to have a speech in Ukrainian? More comfortable? Do we have a translation?
We do have translation, although I have to tell you that your English is better than mine, so you should feel free to speak in English as well.
Thank you.
Again, I would like to say good afternoon and good evening. We have evening here. As for innovation in energy and reform, I want to say that this is exactly what my ministry is doing. Is interpretation simultaneous? Yes, it is simultaneous. Please continue. We, as a ministry, perfectly understand that while energy revolution is taking place in the world, we need to think more thoroughly about the new economy that would be based on the principle of energy efficiency. Otherwise, we clearly understand that we will be stuck in the past, and we will never be able to catch up with those countries that made energy efficiency a priority for themselves. Perhaps we will never be able to catch up otherwise. This is why my ministry is the government agency that is responsible for energy efficiency and energy saving approaches, especially in the sphere of housing, which is a big part of energy spending of my country. Each day we spend a lot of funds for heating, for construction projects, which, as we understand, are still not resource renewable and such that would allow to recycle building materials. We are now implementing a program for new kindergartens, but we can see that as those facilities are being built, we do not get the efficiency indicators that we would like to achieve, which is why we are working with international partners that help us to bring in not just financial resources, but more importantly, we bring in the experience of international partners in order to get a better understanding of how effective our decisions should be in regard to new construction. We have some experience of bringing donor help from the European Investment Bank, from the World Bank, and just 2 months ago we signed an agreement to bring in 300 million euros. Next year we expect a new project to be started on renovation of 2,000 facilities of social infrastructure. That includes schools and kindergartens. We have issued a number of regulations to help our construction market to build such facilities that are close to zero resource consumption, with clearly stated norms for minimal spending, and those standards are set up so that when specialists design those facilities, they know what the requirements are. Those documents that we adopted will certainly push forward towards that transition. We have prepared some new ministerial orders about best practices of European countries in order to use those standards not only in private construction but in government projects as well. They allow to adopt design of objects in 3D technologies and calculate their energy consumption, and most importantly, eventually when they need to be demolished, so that this would happen with the least damage to the environment. This concept has been adopted by the Cabinet of Ministers, and we will soon get it officially approved. Another issue we're working on together with the Ministry of Energy is reintegration of former coal basins. We have such regions in Ukraine which include hundreds of towns in Donetsk province and Luhansk province, as well as in the west, Lviv province. Life is focused around those mining enterprises in those towns. I worked in Lviv region recently and was responsible for some mining objects, and unfortunately those facilities cannot be effective today, and we need to make steps towards a more effective use of those facilities and eventually to make a transition to other alternative sources of energy and providing new skills and jobs for current employees of those facilities in order to let them continue earning resources for their families, but also without damage to the environment. There are some new practices. There is like a mine named Nadia in Lviv province where supplies of coal have been depleted, but their equipment is in good condition, and we are working together with European partners and the Ministry of Energy in order to redirect this facility, turn it into a museum for tourists from Poland, from nearby Poland and other countries, to demonstrate this as a historical feature and provide new economic opportunities for local residents. We as the ministry are also responsible for decentralization that is underway in Ukraine. One of the messages we have, there are several, but one of the messages we make for about 1,500 new territorial communities is that in their strategies of territorial development for those small and large communities with 5,000 residents and up to 1 million and more, they must focus on energy efficiency as well. Because, well, most of them understand this because the expenditures on their social infrastructure is totally their budget, and if they understand that a lot of energy spending consumes their funds, consumes their utility bills, they understand that if that spending is reduced, they can spend more on the infrastructure. We met with colleagues from the European Union recently who allowed us to create the Energy Efficiency Fund for renovations of existing housing buildings. We got several hundred requests to do this. I'm sure there'll be a lot more in the future. Thank you for your attention. I will stay with you, ready to answer your question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, Deputy Minister, for stepping in for your boss, the minister. I'm afraid this is the fourth minister who had to send their regrets today because of the president's meeting. I think next time when we do our conference again in April, we better invite the president to speak so that he doesn't disrupt our program by calling important meetings in Kyiv. Thank you very much for that. We may come back to you with some questions. Next, we have Mr. Yaroslav Demchenkov, Deputy Minister of Energy of Ukraine. Mr. Deputy Minister, the government recently announced some very ambitious targets on energy transition and reducing greenhouse gas emissions before your European partners. Could you tell us more about that? And is there need, therefore, because of these new targets, to update Ukraine's energy strategy? We would be very interested in hearing you explain that to us.
Mr. Chow, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for invitation. Appreciate to be here today. Good afternoon. Surely it was a year of great turbulence. The pandemic hit hard every economy and every industry in the world. Ukraine and its energy sector are no exception. As we look for ways to recovery, there is one thing to keep in mind. Times like this are also an opportunity for a change. We can give up the old ways and outdated policy and adopt new ones for a more sustainable future. Before the pandemic, policymakers could delay solutions to major energy sector problems in order not to undermine their own popularity. Now the recession really revealed all these problems, so it would be impossible to hide them back. Currently, balancing the energy sector comes at a high price, and the debt of state-owned companies continue to grow. An attempt to strike a new deal on the green tariff was rather successful for the government, but it did not solve the debt issue properly and thereby sent a negative message to local and international investors. We still have a problem with unprincipled market players who attempt to use loopholes for profiteering. The energy cost for businesses goes up while household electricity bills remain the same for years. The renewable boom was not equal by the incentives for the creation of balancing and highly maneuverable capacity, energy storages, and comprehensive energy efficiency. Balancing their renewable generation by burning coal demonstrates the unsecured all such policies. Meanwhile, the cyber threats for the energy sector are growing. The attempts by Russia to leverage its oil and gas influence in Ukraine and Europe are far from over. We have to be frank with ourselves and all the stakeholders. We cannot get back to the way things were. There is no excuse for a delay either. The time for change is now. We would like to use this opportunity to outline our priority as the Ministry of Energy of Ukraine. First, it is important that Ukraine's energy, the economic recovery and energy sector reform align with the green transition. Ukraine is committed to the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement. Ukraine aims to become climate neutral. Current energy strategy till 2035 is under revision by the ministry, which seeks to introduce more ambitious measures for carbon footprint and greenhouse gas emission reduction. And next year, we will develop new energy strategy till 2050. Our strategic target for 2035 is having 25% of energy coming from renewable sources. And this target will be reached. And the projected growth of actually much higher. And we think a 60% target for 2050 is attainable as well. The green transition should be also just. We believe that the American and European assistance will greatly speed up an inclusive transformation of communities that heavily depend on coal production, and foreign business will join the creation of new production and service facilities based on fairly strong infrastructure of mines that will be closed. Second, we need innovation. At the moment, Ukraine relies heavily on carbon-intensive technologies. In the long run, it hurts both an environment and competitiveness. Ukraine spends 2-3 times more energy per unit of GDP than other European countries. We need to significantly reduce the carbon intensity of our energy production and replace it with renewable sources and nuclear generation. We also need modern maneuverable capacity, energy storage, and other smart grid solutions. We are developing a strategy for hydrogen production, internal use, and export. These projects require international cooperation, and I think there is a lot Ukraine and the US can do together in this field. Third, it is time to boost the energy security of Ukraine. This sector depends on Russia to a great extent, and Russia still tries to leverage this dependence for its geopolitical gains. This is why Ukraine is grateful for the support and action the US is taking to block Nord Stream 2 construction. I hope that all our partners will eventually realize that Nord Stream is not just a business project by design, but a geopolitical stranglehold for Ukrainian gas transit. There is no room for such policies in the independent world. There is one more secure threat: cyber attack and on critical energy infrastructure. Ukraine has been under constant attacks for a couple of years. The consequences could be really grave both for the society and the environment. We view this threat very seriously and urge other countries to cooperate on the cybersecurity of critical energy infrastructure. On behalf of the Ministry of Energy of Ukraine, I would like to thank the US government and its agency for continuous support of Ukraine's energy sector. In particular, the bipartisan support of sanctions against Nord Stream 2 is highly appreciated in Ukraine. I would like to thank US for comprehensive support in Ukraine's energy sector reform. The Energy Security Project is the biggest international technical assistance project in Ukraine and contributed a lot for the energy reform process. There is a lot of opportunities to create a greener and more prosperous future in energy sector that the governments of our countries, as well as business and NGOs, could contribute. Let's work together, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Minister, for a very interesting and very comprehensive statement. Our next speaker was supposed to be Mr. Maxim Timchenko, who is the CEO of DTEK, which happens to be the largest private energy company in Ukraine. Unfortunately, he's unable to join us today because of an unavoidable conflict. I don't know, maybe he got called by the president too. I don't know. But he did leave us with a short recording, which we would like to play right now. And then I had a follow-up question for him. Please.
The first commercial central power plant, the Pearl Street Station, was built in the United States in Manhattan in 1992, and it was a thermal power plant. Thermal coal generation used to be the main and the only business of our company. However, by 2040, the tech plans to be completely carbon neutral. 10 years ago, we built our first wind and solar power plants in Ukraine, and though that energy storage systems would change the energy mix. Today we are building the first energy storage system in Ukraine with our US partners, Honeywell, and studying hydrogen opportunities. We are looking for new blue oceans and understand that the way to them lies through systematic search and implementation of innovative solutions. We may not know exactly what our energy system will look like in 30 years, but we definitely understand that it should be carbon neutral. For us in Ukraine, there are three types of factors that influence our move away from fossil fuels. First, environmental and climate factors. Parts of Ukraine have some of the worst air quality in Europe. In recent years, we have noticed more and more climate changes. Ukraine has signed and ratified the Paris Agreement and needs to take fast and effective measures to combat climate change. The second, political factors. Ukraine's European integration is fixed in our constitution. It's an irreversible choice. Ukraine shares environmental values of the European Union. At the same time, we see what tremendous changes are associated with the EU Green Deal. Third, economic factors. Generating electricity from renewable sources is getting cheaper from year to year. All over the world, investments in this area are growing, and Ukraine is no exception. The share of renewable energy in the total mix jumped from 0.4% in 2010 to almost 12% this year. Ukraine's energy strategy provides for an increase in renewables share to 25% in electricity generation mix by 2035. In terms of our company, we have built 1 gigawatt of solar and wind power capacity, including 200 megawatt wind farm in partnership with GE. If you look at global trends, it's obvious that we are only at the beginning of this path. COVID-19 slowed down the pace of renewable energy development, but it still remains high while fossil fuels share is declining. According to the International Energy Agency, electricity generated by renewable technologies will increase by 7% globally in 2020, underpinned by record new capacity additions. Renewable energy sources are becoming more cost-effective. According to International Renewable Energy Agency, retiring the least competitive 500 gigawatt of existing coal-fired plants and replacing them with solar PV and onshore wind would reduce system generation cost and potentially also the cost passed on to consumers by between 12 to 23 billion US dollars per year, depending on coal prices. This information is especially relevant for us since a large number of power plants in Ukraine are outdated and should be commissioned. Unfortunately, the energy system and renewables development in Ukraine have their own limitations. Ukraine has great potential for the development of renewable energy sources. We have a favorable climate, highly qualified specialists, and relatively cheap access to grids. In recent years, we have also gained rich experience, which allows us to successfully implement projects. However, there are obstacles to green transition, which can be divided into technical and economic ones. Technical obstacles can be overcome through technical progress and innovation. For example, today the construction of renewable energy sources is constrained by shortage of flexible capacities, but solutions are offered. These are modern gas units, small modular nuclear reactors, and energy storage systems. Over time, we will understand which solution or combination of solutions will be optimal. Another significant obstacle for renewable development in Ukraine is technical conditions of grid, and it can only be improved through investments. Over 80% of grids are obsolete and should be modernized. Overcoming economic obstacles requires political will and commitment from the country's leadership to reform. Business in Ukraine has to work in conditions of high country risks associated with unstable investment conditions and consequently with a higher cost of financing. In this situation, it's extremely important that the state creates such economic conditions that will outweigh the negative factors. In addition to the often mentioned fight against corruption and judicial reform, respect to the rule of law and private ownership, the completion of energy sector reform, and the creation of a stable and transparent regulatory environment is also needed. We highly appreciate the efforts of the American partners and in particular USA in promoting energy reforms in Ukraine. We need to join efforts to make Ukraine's energy sector highly attractive for investments, and of course more active involvement of such influential financial organizations as the Development Finance Corporation and Maxim Bank could have a significant impact on the development of renewables and other innovative industries in Ukraine. and strengthen cooperation with US companies.
While I had the opportunity to talk to Mr. Timchenko, I also asked him what he thought the greatest accomplishments have been, particularly in the electricity sector in recent years, and what challenges remain that need to be overcome for further progress. Please play the second recording.
On July 1st, 2019, a new model of the electricity market was launched in Ukraine. This was a long-awaited reform that had been in preparation for many years. The new market model complies with the requirements of the EU Third Energy Package and meets Ukraine's obligations in accordance with its membership in the energy community and the association agreement with the EU. Despite numerous concerns, the collapse of the new electricity market did not happen. Nevertheless, 1.5 years of market operation revealed serious problems. The new market model was designed in such a way that debts should not be accumulated. However, despite all hopes, non-market restrictions and practices still continue in the new market, and as a result, the new liberalized market model also accumulated huge debts. One of the most serious problems is the state's debt to renewable energy producers. Further development of renewable energy sources in Ukraine will be possible only if the market is financially balanced. Thus, it is necessary to complete the reform and remove non-market restrictions. The market should be allowed to be a true market. The best price regulator is free competition, and we really want large Western companies, large American companies to come to the Ukrainian energy market. And a truly independent regulator, as defined in the law, will monitor and analyze the market operation, but not intervene into the market functioning. If violations are identified, the regulator should recommend measures to eliminate them. We really hope that this will be the case in the near future, and only then Ukraine will be able to really implement all our ambitious plans for green transition. Ukraine is capable of becoming a leader in decarbonization in Eastern Europe, and the DTEK is ready to support this. However, only reforms and a truly free market can become the foundation of these transformations.
Well, thank you, Mr. Timchenko. Sorry you couldn't be here. I'm really happy that all three of our Ukrainian speakers so far have been forward-looking in terms of opportunities and what needs to be done in the future in order to deepen reform in the energy sector and making more progress than have been made so far. Next, we have my old friend, Mr. Riaz Awan. Riaz and I have known each other for so long that we don't mind calling each other old. He has worked on energy in Ukraine for more than 2 decades. First from his position in the United States Department of Energy, and now as Vice President for Holtec International, in charge of their various operations in Ukraine. Holtec is a US company which is the world's leader in nuclear technology, systems, and capital equipment. Riaz, please tell us about Holtec's various projects in Ukraine. I understand you hit an important milestone recently, and what you might hope to do in the future. Riaz.
Well, good afternoon and good evening, Dr. Chow. It's so wonderful to be of assistance to you today and join you. You know, I had the honor and privilege to working with you for more than 20 years, not only in Ukraine, in the United States, but in my previous job in Europe on a regional level. And I must say that you do give a very direct message, which is important to the national security, energy security of not only Ukraine, but in all other countries. And thank you for bringing up this, the latest developments. And that is related to Holtec's project, which we have been undertaking for many years that started at the Chernobyl spent fuel project. That was actually initially started back in 1997, and it was sort of hibernated and timed for many years until 2011 by a previous contractor, where it's an internationally donor-funded project, and the technology could not be licensed under the nuclear Ukrainian regulator. We took it over, and on December 14th and on November 18th of this year, two major historic milestones have been achieved. That means Holtec provided technology has been deployed, and the batch of almost 200, to be very exact, 186 used nuclear fuel assemblies from the shuttered 3 Chernobyl reactors have been permanently stored for next 100-year storage. It's a historic milestone because this facility is the world's largest spent nuclear facility in the world. So that's number one, I must say that. Now, the Ukrainian, this event was attended on December 14th by senior Ukrainian government officials, by Minister of Ecology, by the head nuclear Ukraine regulator, by other officials. So now this sets the stage for the full operational license to load all the fuel there, because this fuel is loaded, is stored in old spent fuel pools with sort of unexpired license. That's number one, I must say that. Holtec is, as you said very kindly, is a world-renowned leading entity for various energy systems. And we are the world leader for providing all transport and used fuel system storage in the world. We have almost 70% of the market in the United States. Our president, Dr. Chris Singh, holds more than 100 patents in the United States. We are a private company here. We have, for the more than 34 years, not a single penny in debt. We are top-rated credit organization. Now, we are also, at this time, the leading organization in the United States performing decommissioning of the shutdown reactors in the United States. By May of next year, we will have a portfolio of $5 billion in decommissioning the reactors in the United States. Just today, Dr. Chow, by the United States Department of Energy, my former employer, we were awarded a $147 million of contract to continue the development of Holtec design, personally by our president, of small modular reactor. We call it high SMR, Holtec International Small Modular Reactor 160 program. And we have been funding this on our own cost for the past several years. We already have a tri-party agreement in Ukraine between Holtec, Energoatom, and the consultant to Ukrainian nuclear regulator to perform certain work for the possibility of feasibility and deployment. So it does provide us a lot of opportunities as the Ukrainian aging reactors. For an example, some of them are almost 50 years old, going back to late 60s or early 70s, because this is really very important for all our audience here, because these reactors will have to be one day shut down, because Ukrainian nuclear sector, while we talk about oil and gas, produce more than 50% of country's electricity. And in my humble opinion, while we are going on with renewables and green energy and renewable energy, all this capacity all of a sudden cannot be replaced. Unlike the United States, where the government mandates or decommissioning trust fund, and to my knowledge, there is no money reserved or tariffs are being placed to have a fund established for the decommissioning of these facilities here. So that's going to be a problem, because the assistance phase for the nuclear safety program, where United States government spent almost close to $750 million, or European Union did, or the United States government did for the shutdown or decommissioning of Chernobyl nuclear power plant, that phase is pretty much over with now. So now we are moving away from the assistant phase to the cooperative phase. That means a commercial relationship. So Ukraine must seriously consider this going forward. And Holtec has the expertise, knowledge, technology. We are getting additional contracts in the United States, and it's all being endorsed by the United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So when you just brought up kindly about our major historic milestones having been achieved at Chernobyl, on the same line, we have been involved in helping Ukraine, assistance Ukraine under a commercial project, not assistance project with Energoatom, to construct a central spent nuclear fuel storage facility in Ukraine. The realization of this project would make Ukraine the world leader, that they are consolidating its spent nuclear fuel inside the Chernobyl exclusion zone. It has not even happened in the United States. And all the nuclear utilities in the United States are trying very hard. And again, Holtec is trying to build this facility in the state of New Mexico. However, we believe that Holtec, and Ukraine can demonstrate that to the world community that they're a world leader in the field of nuclear energy sector. We have achieved major accomplishment. We have our technology license under strict nuclear regulatory guidelines by the Ukraine nuclear regulator. We are in the advanced stage of supplying and delivering equipment. The goal set by our customer is to bring and store the nuclear fuel for 100 years life in this facility is April of year 2021. Why it is so? Because their contract of Ukraine, as the Honorable Deputy Minister of Energy said, that we must reduce dependence on Russian Federation. And Ukraine spends almost $200 million a year in shipping its fuel to Russian Federation. Now, if this contract were to be renewed again, Russia can dictate any terms and conditions. They can say, we refuse to accept this fuel, or you sign with us 15 years contract. So it is very important that this facility is completed and commissioned by April. And Holtec is not involved in this. Secondly, another important thing, Dr. Chow, and for Honorable Deputy Minister of Energy, right now, with the help of the United States government technical assistance, Westinghouse now has a share of providing fresh nuclear fuel for 6 or 8 Ukrainian reactors. So that means Russia does not have any monopoly. They are actually providing now fuel at competitive rates. If this facility was not to be built, Westinghouse fuel contract will not be renewed because this fuel will have no place to go anywhere. It cannot go to Sweden. It cannot go to the United States. Russia will not accept it. Ukraine will have no place to store it. So that's another sensitivity. So most important thing is, Dr. Chow, as you said, the important objective of this forum is diversification, innovation, technology. Having said all that, we, Holtec, are ready to move forward, establishing manufacturing facilities for canister manufacturing, for our systems, for the lifetime supply of our storage system, which will create hundreds and hundreds of jobs in Ukraine, which will result in billions of dollars over a period of 20 to 25 years. Not only that, our technology will be supplied in the European region, high-skilled jobs for Ukraine, supply of SMR 160 components, and additional opportunities for us. We have already been contacted by credible companies like DTEK and very highly respectable company and other companies in Ukraine establishing this manufacturing infrastructure. And there are a lot of opportunities like battery supply storage systems, which will result in grid stability, smart grid, and things of that nature. So I can actually go on and on, but you have put a very strict time limit on me.
Yeah, well, Dr. Awan, your presentation is so rich. I have many questions, but I will control myself in order to leave time for our last speaker, which lucky for us, also happens to be a nuclear expert. I think the very important points you made about what needs to be done in the nuclear sector in Ukraine, and it's also time to move, and I think the Deputy Minister would agree, to move from foreign assistance to foreign investment, because that's the only way of maintaining a long-lasting cooperative relationship between our two countries. Next, we have Mr. Vitaliy Demianiuk, who is CEO of NT Engineering. Vitaliy, can I assume that NT means nuclear technology? Is that
absolutely?
Is that a good guess?
Absolutely. So
I know you have vast experience and expertise in this area. Please share with us your perspective, and also what reforms, if any, are needed in Ukraine to take full advantage of its potential in nuclear energy.
Thank you very much. Good morning for our American colleagues. Good evening for Ukrainian. And it's a great honor for me to participate in this panel. And if you don't mind, I will share some slides with you. And we'll need, I think, no more than 7 minutes. So our group of company is working over 10 years in the field of engineering nuclear power generation industry. And we are a contractor of Argonne and Oak Ridge national laboratories, and also implement NATO projects in which United States side is always one of the main partners. Using the example of 2 projects which are supported by United States, the Department of State and Department of Energy, I would like to demonstrate how effective our partnership is now, and how broad and far-reaching the prospects for US-Ukrainian cooperation in the field of nuclear energy can be. Thinking about application of innovation, we primarily try to reduce existing inefficiency. So let me propose the example. The installed capacity utilization factor is one of the main indicators of the efficiency of a power plant. In year 2018, when we started the projects, the average installed capacity utilization factor of Ukraine nuclear power units was 72%. While the same average for nuclear power units in the United States was 94%, so a huge difference, yes? One of the key factors affecting the power unit shutdown time and consequently the installed capacity utilization factor is the duration of annual repairs and maintenance. Our task was to substantiate the possibility of reducing repair period. A pilot project was launched at Zaporizhia Nuclear VVR 1000 Unit number 2 in March 2018 with the support of Argonne National Laboratory, Department of Energy and Department of State. And the key element of the project was the introduction of risk-informed approaches to the nuclear power unit's maintenance without reducing the level of safety. And the implementation of the project and the achievement particular results required not only engineering work. We had overcome the narrow thinking. We got questions, why are you working to increase generation at the time of surplus electricity on the market? And we had an answer. The local surplus cannot justify global inefficiency. Project is completed, approved by the State Nuclear Regulatory Inspectorate of Ukraine, and was put into trial operation. And starting from year 2021, the duration of annual outage will be reduced, just a second, for 22 days. This means increased generation by 0.5 terawatt hours per year and increase annual revenue by $12 million per power unit at current prices. The future implementation of the project at remaining 12 VVR 1000 power units in Ukraine equals to additional 6 terawatts hours per year, which corresponds to the annual output of one VVR 1000 power unit. And I would like to note that the cost of construction for VVR 1000 power unit is about $6 billion, and the implementation of the project for 12 power units cost about $30 million. And pays off in the first year of operation. So we see 200 times. This is an indicator of the effectiveness of our US-Ukrainian cooperation, of the effectiveness of American support, an indicator of advantages of innovative development over extensive development. The second area that is under development and which I would like to use as an illustration of the prospects for US-Ukrainian cooperation is the promotion of US small modular reactor technology. The United States is today a leader in the development of and deployment of small modular reactor technology. Considering the high level of safety, relatively simplicity of design, ability to maneuver power, and small modular reactors can form the basis for the future modernization of our power industry, I strongly believe. In addition, the small modular reactors are an ideal complementary component with the renewable energy, while being at the same time carbon neutral. It is very important for Ukraine not only to preserve, but also to expand its competence in nuclear energy. Today, as a contractor of Argonne National Laboratory, we are working on separate chapters of the independent safety analysis report for US small modular reactor technology in accordance with Ukrainian legislation. Our work is an integral element that will allow in the coming future to prepare for licensing of small modular reactor technology in Ukraine. And we know each other with Mr. Awan, and I hope that we will cooperate in future. At the same time, as far I know, the State Nuclear Regulatory Inspectorate of Ukraine is carrying out its part of the work related to the regulatory framework. Ukraine is actively preparing to embrace American small modular reactor technology. We would like to be not only a recipient of the assistance, that is so important for us, of course, but we want to create a real partnership with American companies Such partnership will allow us to promote American technologies, and Ukraine will find effective place in this partnership, develop engineering and industrial potential, modernize the Ukrainian energy sector. As a part of our promotion of small modular reactor technology, we are working on idea of creating a regional technological hub in Ukraine, which will allow localization of production and promotion of technologies in Eastern European regions. So I strongly believe in our cooperation, and I hope that in future, Ukraine will be a reliable partner for American companies in our country and in our region globally. Thank you.
Thank you all very, very much. I'm afraid that our time is up. I realized that we had a number of speakers who have very substantive remarks to make. I'll endeavor in April to give us twice as much time as we had this time. I'm really very thankful that all our speakers not focused not on the problems of the energy sector in Ukraine, which have been around for so long that it's quite well known, but are increasingly talking about opportunities, particularly commercial opportunities for our two countries to work together on. And I hope that this will be the focus of our follow-up conversation in April when the foundation will do its next virtual large conference. Thank you all very much, panelists, and I hope the audience also enjoyed the conversation.